Stars keep falling from the sky, just like fireflies illuminate the universe.
Hello, David.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, fine. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk to you, to talk about the band, this incredible band, The Rods, to talk about the new album. Also, of course, perhaps my first question will be very simple. It's for Metal Up TV on YouTube, the channel Metal Up TV,
Mm.
everywhere in the world. Can you just tell me who you are and a little presentation of the bands who begin in the 80s?
Yes. Well, David Rock Feinstein here. That's what I go by, and the Rods. And the Rods started, back in the early '80s. And I had taken a little hiatus break from being an elf, but we wanted to. I wanted to form a band because I started writing songs again, and I needed something to do, and I thought, well, I would form a band to just go play bars, and make some money, to
Mm,
pay my bill. And it was never an intention to form another band that would go out and make records and tour and that whole thing. So I went to see this band play in a local club, and Carl was the drummer in the band, and went with a friend, and I was impressed with Carl's playing. So I met Carl that night, and I asked him. I said, "I'm thinking of starting a band, do you want to be the drummer? You want to come in with me?" And he said yes. So at that point we got a bass player that was a local fellow that we both knew, and we started practicing, and we were doing cover tunes because in the clubs back then you were playing four sets of cover material,
mhm.
40 minutes on, 20 minutes off. So we started rehearsing, we started to do that, and then I started to write songs, and Carl has written some songs also, and we thought, well, when you write a song you want to hear what it sounds like recorded, so we kind of like makeshift recorded it, and all of a sudden we were playing this bar, and somebody came up to us and wanted to know, wanted to be our manager, and he had an agency, and long story short, he ended up getting us a record deal. And next thing we know, we made we made an album, and we were over in England touring with Iron Maiden. So it kind of like came all about unexpectedly, really, because the band was originally started just to go out and play some clubs, some bars, to make $50 a night, to
Mhm.
live on, and it just kind of naturally took off. So we just continued it that way.
Yes, you never stop finally, and you come back with this new album. It's just out since the 5 September. We could
Yeah.
see it. A great, great album. The album is a Wild Dogs Unchained. Finally, you go very fast to record this new album because last year you get a new album, an album also, and 1 year after you come back with this album with all the songs. Finally, was it really easy for you to write songs? You are the Lucky Luke of the writing. You go very fast.
It comes pretty easily to me. Back in the '80s, back in the days, like the times were different then, obviously, than they are now. So, all the bands, were writing about partying and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And us being a three-piece band, that's what basically, if I wrote a song or if Carl wrote a song, it was about the times for those times, and we also, being a three-piece band, we had to write songs that we could put across, like
Mhm.
actually playing. Um, my intention as being the singer in the band was really never the original intention. Right from the beginning, I never really cared about being the singer. I'm not really a singer, kind of a singer.
Mhm.
At the time we formed the band, there really wasn't anybody around, So when we started out, actually Carl sang lead on some songs, and our original bass player Steve sang lead on some songs, and I sang, most of the leads. But we established our foundation and our identity by the voice of the band. So as the years went on, we never looked to get another singer in the band, and I always wrote songs that I felt that would fit with the band, like that we could play live and that we could associate with the fans with. This new album, as the years have gone by, I just felt like, all of a sudden we got this other record deal with Massacre, and then they picked up the next album, and it's like, oh my God, I got to write 10 more songs, and it's like, it's not that easy. I mean, to come up with it quickly, you know what I mean, to record an album. But I was inspired in the last few years about, more so about like what was going on in the world, so you'll hear some of the songs on this album that are my feelings towards, what's going on in the world, these innocent people that are getting killed, they're getting bombed, they're getting, they're losing everything, everything that they have, they're losing if they manage to stay alive. And the situation that the world is in today is, to me, and this is my personal feeling, is in a bad situation. So some of these songs on this album are, my feelings coming through. They're not necessarily songs that would be on an early Rods album, because these songs, when you listen to the lyrics, you can tell that, what my feelings were about this. Yeah. And I'm proud of these songs, and I know the other two guys in the band are proud too. There's more to it. I wanted to express a message, as a feeling. And instead of in the old days, we basically wrote about, what time does the party start, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, it's like, it was hard for me, not hard, but it was, it's still a question mark as to, how it will be received, because these are different songs, some of these songs are different songs for the Rods, even though to me, they're some of the best songs that I've ever written. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be interesting to see how it will be received by the fans. Now maybe it will be received very well. Maybe they won't. I personally don't really care, because I want the fans to recognize what I'm trying to say in these songs and what's going on in the world. But these are my feelings, that I've expressed in this music. And that's the main thing for me, to be able to express myself when I write something. But as you asked before, it's easy. It's always been relatively easy for me to come up with a song readily, because I document. I'm always constantly looking for titles. Like if I hear something on the television or somebody say something, I said, hey, that would be a great title, and I would put it on my phone. Or if I was fooling around with the guitar and I came up with this little riff, and I would record it on my phone. So I have all these little things to go back. So I said, well, if it's time for me to come up with a song, let me listen to what I've got on my phone, that I've cataloged. 90% or more is no good. So I pick out what I can put together, what I can really establish a story around, and I always felt that, that Ronnie, and working with Ronnie and his brilliant mind, for lyrics and storytelling, I wanted to put myself into that category where I'm really saying something that means something, rather than just, like I said before, what time does the party start? So that's where those songs came up, and I hope they're well received by everyone.
Yeah, like you said, there is a huge difference between the Rods of the 80s and the Rods of now in 2005. There is this incredible singer. I love this song, World on Fire. With, like you say, it's about the world, about what we live, because there is a Ukraine, and everywhere in the world, there are a lot of conflict, and there is and it's very melodic, a huge ballad, semi ballad, with a huge, incredible solo of guitar at the end. I always bought this song finally because I have the impression that it's really a comeback in the 80s, a huge song, very
Yeah.
melodic and with a catchy chorus too.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. World on Fire, it was when Carl heard the song first, he thought, oh, this is the best song you've ever written. I said, well, I think it's a great song because it tells, And then I wrote the next song, and actually one of my favorite songs on the album is Tears for the Innocent,
Mhm,
because
yeah.
it's like we said before, you're getting bombed. These are innocent people, no matter where it is in the world.
Mhm,
Imagine yourself right now if a bomb came down and blew everything around you away,
mhm.
and you lost everything, what it would be like. And that's what these people are going through. It doesn't matter, who you are, what country you're from, what it is. It's just not, right. And my feelings, for these people really, and I feel so bad, for these people, and that's where that song came from. But there's some pretty good, uh, messages in that song also. But World on Fire is a really good song. I'm proud of also.
Yes, is it also I see, of course, I see the clip video, and on this clip there are some reality image, and there is you are also in the place, and we see a lot of huge picture of Ronnie James Dio, and lot of little bill about Ronnie James Dio. Was it important? Is it a sort of homage to Ronnie, who is you are the cousin? I think it's a right word in English, cousin of Ronnie James Dio. You begin with him a long time ago in 1970s. But is it a
Mhm.
sort of homage also, this clip about Ronnie?
Yeah, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours about, Ronnie and about my experiences with Ronnie. I grew up, we grew up together, not together, but, in the same town, hometown, being a relative. Ronnie, yeah, back in the day, Ronnie was, he was 5 years older than me. And of course, he played trumpet when he was a child. And of course, when I turned 7 years old, I wanted to play trumpet. So I took trumpet lessons, because I wanted to be like him. And then when he formed a band, um, and we were, and of course, I was probably 12 or 13, and I said, I want to form a band too, and Ronnie's band was the best band around, and I got one of my friends that played guitar a little bit. We were only 12 or 13 years old. And I said, well, geez, I play trumpet. I can't play in a rock band with playing trumpet, And so I took up playing drums, and I played drums in my own local band for a while. And Ronnie knew I played drums, and I actually sat in with his band before playing drums. And one night, it was Ronnie Dio and the Prophets back then. And
Yeah.
one night they played a bar in our hometown here, and on the break, uh, we were talking, and he said, oh, you know how to play guitar, don't you? Because he knew I was a drummer. And I said, yeah, I can play guitar. Well, I know like three chords on the guitar. That's it. Because my friend taught me three chords on the guitar. I said, I can play guitar. Why? He said, well, our rhythm guitar player is, leaving the band, and we need to replace the rhythm guitar player. At that point, there were two guitarists. One was a lead and one was a rhythm. And he said, we'd like to have you come in as the rhythm guitar player. So I said, I was, overwhelmed with that. So I said, yes. So this fella named Dick was a rhythm guitar player. He stayed on for 2 or 3 months and taught me, because I had to learn 4 sets of cover songs, because that's what they were doing in bars. And so he stayed on, and when I could play a half a set, 1 set, 2 set. When I could play with the band all 4 sets, that's when Dick left, and I became the rhythm guitar player.
Mhm.
And that was Ronnie Dio and the Prophets. And I learned so much, and I was so inspired by Ronnie and the other guys in the band too, because they were older than me. They were all 5 years older than me. So I was like the kid that was listening and taking in everything, that was going on. And of course, Ronnie's band was the biggest band around, in the club scene. And so at that time, we played and we took, I'm trying to think of the series of events, but it evolved into what was the Electric Elves, then the Elves, and then Elf. And when we became, when we were the Elves, we got into a bad car accident. And I don't know, not too many people know about it, but we were playing in Connecticut, and on our way home, after being there a week, we got hit by a drunk driver, and all our equipment in the van we're all in the van with our equipment. The equipment was destroyed. The van was destroyed. Ronnie hit the windshield. He had over 100 stitches in his scalp. His whole scalp was torn back. I had a broken leg, broken ankle. My eye was hit. We woke up in a bed next to each other in Winsted, Connecticut. And, we looked over at each other and we looked like zombies. We're all black and blue from the accident. And, we found out that Nicky, the other guitar player, was killed. And, we started to cry. And, it was a very emotional time. And, we looked over at each other and you said, are we going to put this thing back together? And we both said, yes, we are, So we were, we were in the hospital there for a week, and then we came back home to, recuperate. And once we could get a little bit better, we were going to start the band again. And at that point, it was just me. I was the guitar player. Ronnie played bass at the time and sang, and Gary Driscoll on drums, which he didn't get hurt too bad in the accident. So we needed a fourth person, and we decided to get this fellow named Mickey Lee, who was a friend of ours. He played piano. And he joined the band, and that's what became the Elf Band. And when we became the Elf Band, we started to write songs, and we were still playing bars, but we started to write songs, and we played in Connecticut a lot, and we met this. It was a young kid at the time, probably not even college student age. He loved the band. He loved us, and he wanted to be good friends with us. And every time we'd go to Connecticut, we'd hang out together. And he would actually knock on doors and make phone calls to club owners, schools, say, hey, you have to hire Elf, you have to bring them here, because he wanted to hang out with us, And we did that a lot. And then one time while we were there, he goes, I got some bad news. And we said, what is it? And he said, I took a job with this company in New York City called ATI, which at the time was, if not, is one of the biggest booking agencies in New York City, if not the biggest. And they said, that's not bad news. That's good news. That's good news for us. Even though we might not be able to hang out much together, you're working for this big company. That's a big connection. So in turn, through him working there, he got us the audition with Clive Davis, and I think it was Columbia Records at the time. And we went to New York City. We set up in this big room, and there was some folding chairs, against the wall. Clive came in, and with some of his people from the office, and they sat in the chairs, and to our surprise, Roger Glover and Ian Pace walk in.
Yeah.
They were looking at the time to produce a band. They were looking for a band to produce. They wanted to get into production. So we were auditioning for them also. So, we didn't know it until that day. So what we did, we just played like 4 or 5 of our original songs that we had written. And then everybody got up and left. Never said anything, So the next day, we found out that the record label wanted to sign us, and that Roger and Ian wanted to produce our album. And geez, within a couple of weeks, we were in Atlanta, Georgia, at Studio One, recording the first Elf album. That's where Roger and Ian wanted to record it. And I think that Studio One was owned by, or was owned at the time by the Atlanta Rhythm Section. So it was a very well-known studio. So we went to Georgia, we recorded that album, and then shortly after that, we were supporting Deep Purple on all their tours. And it's like
Yes, those
Deep Purple,
two.
Deep Purple at the time was like the biggest band in the world. I mean, they were playing arenas, and also on top of that, they were one of my most favorite bands. So it was like a very exciting thing for me. Not to mention that becoming a guitar player from a drummer that never took a guitar lesson, or anything. My inspirations during that process were Jeff Beck, Ritchie Blackmore, Jimi Hendrix, all these guitar players that were like a blues-based guitar players that took it above the limit a little bit. And those were my inspirations. So Ritchie was, one of my idols. So it was a big deal for us to be on tour with them. And of course, Roger and Ian being the producers of the album,
Yeah.
it was good for them too, because we got that exposure, when playing in arenas. So we basically went from playing bars to playing arenas.
Yeah.
So it was a big thing. Yeah,
It
and
was
it was,
incredible.
and all the guys in the band were just great to us. So that started our relationship with all the guys in Deep Purple,
Uh-huh.
And it was an amazing time. It really was, because that band Deep Purple was magical on stage. They didn't really, from what I could see, they didn't hang out a lot together off the
Mhm.
stage, but Roger and Ian did. But when they were on stage together, with John Lord and Richie and the original band, they were just magical. They were just so good, so good. So it was an amazing time. It really was.
It was finally your first recording in 1972 or something like that, before 8 years before the Rhodes. And like you said, you are very influenced by Deep Purple, and we feel that on this new album, like some tracks like "Make Me a Believer,"
Uh,
in the middle of the song, the break
yeah,
with the keyboard and everything like that. I have the
yeah.
impression that there is a huge influence of Deep Purple on this song.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much one style. I adapted that style. I never took lessons. I can't play a scale to save my neck. If you,
Mhm.
like, and that's what it evolved into, like the Eddie Van Halen type of playing later on in years. I can't play any of that stuff. I'm not really interested in playing that stuff. I grew up playing, being influenced by people that were like Ritchie and Jeff Beck and Hendrix and stuff that really played from the soul. It was more of a blues based start. So um, I'm one dimensional really as a guitar player, and I still have the roots of what I learned in previous years. What my influences were. So
Yes, it was. So you choose also on this album to finally to re-record some old song from the 3 or 4 first album. Yes, there is.
mhm,
It was important. Wild Dogs Unchained.
mhm.
This version. There is Make a Believer, Hurricane. It was important for you to finally present a new version of these songs. We were good songs on the first album, but finally you want to get something new with these songs, to present something new.
It was because the technology of recording back in the day back then was so much different than it is now, because back then you went into the studio, a room, you set up your equipment, you played as a band, you counted the song off, 1 2 3 4, and boom, you played. There was no click track, there was
Uh-huh.
no digital, there was no, you just recorded, and then you overdubbed the vocals. It was real. So anyways, yeah, it was exciting to do it because for a couple of reasons. Hurricane was always one of our most popular songs. So let's do Hurricane. We did that, and we did a slightly different arrangement. For this album. Carl wrote the song Wild Dogs. And that was years and years ago. Um, and it was a title track to one of our albums. And every time we tried to work that song out to play it live, we could, it seemed like we could never pull it off to make it sound good live for
Mhm.
some reason. It did not make it. So we were never able to play that song live. And we always had a lot of requests to play that song. So Carl, for a long time, he would say to me, can't you take that song and, because he, the way he wrote it was the way it was on the record originally. He says, can't you take that song and do something with it, rearrange it or make it heavier, make it so that, that we can play that song, make it different.
Mhm.
And it took me a while because, it's hard for me. It wasn't hard for me, but it was, I thought about it and I go, geez, I don't know what I can do with that song. But
Yeah.
I started working on it and I finally came up with a different version. I didn't want to change it too much, because it's his song, and I still want him to put across, what he intended to put across in that song. So I came up with a new version and I played it for him, and he loved it. He said, "Oh, this is great. This is so heavy. This is so, he says, we have to record this song." I said, "Well, I agree. I think we can do it a lot better. And I think actually, if we, have any live shows, we could actually play that song live now, because it's different than it was." So that's why we recorded that song. And I'm glad we did. Came out really well. "Make Me a Believer" was a song that I had written probably years prior, and it was never recorded on any Rod's album, And there was a local show here. It was an outdoor show that put on by the city, to put on. And there was a bunch of musicians that came up onto the stage, a bunch of guitar players, different singers and whatnot. And Shmulek Avagal, who was living in town at the time,
Mhm.
I don't know about his history, but I know I think he was from Holland, and he played in a band there. And he had a great voice. He's passed away now, but he had a great voice. So he ended up singing that song live that day, and it ended up coming out. I think it came out on the Heavier Than Thou album because a lot of those songs did. So it was more like a project type of thing, but it's always been a good song, and we always talked about it. So we thought, I think either Freddie or Carl were the ones that said we need to do that song. We should record that song. So that's why we put that on. It was kind of nice to bring that song back from the past and redo it because we always felt that it was a good song.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It came. You begin. The first album was in 1983. In the row after there is the famous Wild Dog and Heavier Than Thou and Let Them Eat Metal. And finally, in 1987, there is a huge stability in the band. Finally, you are always here. The drummer is always only the bassist change, the bassman change. How do you explain finally the stability of the band?
The years that the band that we didn't really do anything, you mean?
Yeah, why do you stop finally in
Oh,
1987?
we stopped not because we were arguing. There was never any kind of negative, you know,
Mhm.
vibrations within the band. And of course we went through four bass players, for various reasons. But um, when we decided to, we just stopped because of the business part of it, with management, from all the record labels. We always felt like we were getting the raw end of the deal, and we just got tired of it. We just said we need to get away from this.
Mhm.
So some years went by, and I started writing songs again, and I started doing solo albums, which basically are meaningless. They're just something you're doing for yourself, really.
Mhm.
And Carl, I hadn't talked to Carl or Garry in quite a while, and Carl called me one day and said, "I just heard your latest solo record." He said, "And it really, really, it's great." He said, "But it makes me want to play again." I said, "Well, why don't we do? Why don't we see if we can do a couple of reunion shows? Local." So I
Mhm.
got a hold of him. He agreed, and we did a show here in my hometown, and we did a show in Gary's hometown, which is only 20 miles from here. And when we did and there were small clubs, like maybe hold 100 people. People came out of the walls with albums for us to sign and this. And the thing is, we never realized we had that many fans. And because there was the internet. Back in the day, we didn't have the internet, but now all of a sudden, when we did these shows, there was the internet, so people knew the Rods are out playing again. So we had so much fun and so much success with those two shows. We said, let's keep doing some shows. Said okay. So at that point, we didn't take on a manager, we didn't take on a booking agency. We did everything ourselves. We, positioned Carl in the spot to take all the phone calls instead of people calling three different people. And, all of a sudden we're getting calls from, promoters. What do you got to have to come play our festival, over in, wherever it was in what country? And we would just say, we need plane tickets. We need, food. We need a hotel room and ground transportation and equipment for the stage. And basically that's what we need to come, and we went to many countries that we had never ever even thought we had fans in, and played these festivals. And 99% of them we just went for expenses. We didn't get paid. And a couple of the times we did get, a performance fee added on, but we did it for the love of doing it and for the fans and because we love playing. And we got to do some great festivals, because of that. So, and that's what we're doing. That's what our status is now, And
Yes,
hopefully with this new album, it might spur a new interest in promoters and festivals to have us come and play some different
so I hope
countries.
that one day you will came back in Europe and perhaps play in France because
We're
you never play in France finally.
no, I know. No, we're hoping to. We're hoping to get some opportunities, to come and play because, the actual playing is our drug. When you're on stage for that hour or 45 minutes or whatever it is, or 2 hours, that is what you basically live for, because it makes you feel good and that the audience feels good and you get, this electricity back from the audience so that, so that's what makes it all worthwhile, because being on the road and even traveling to do 2 or 3 shows, what you have to do to prepare to do those shows is a lot of work. It's hours of rehearsal, it's travel time, it's like not sleeping, it's not eating, it's, all different things just to play that one show. But it's all worthwhile for us to do that. And for any band, I'm sure
Yeah.
any band goes through the same stuff, it's all the same. But it's dedication, and it's the love of doing it. So yeah, I hope we do come to play in France.
So perhaps one day in Paris and in France, I hope for you. We cross the finger.
Yeah.
So, do you know what will be the next single of this album after World of Fire? Do you have choose a song for the future single? I suppose there will be a new single.
I think the single, um, it might be, they talked about Wild Dogs, but it might be Tears for the Innocent. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. One of
Great.
those two. Yeah. So we'll see. I think there's a lyric video for both of those songs. So whatever the record label decides to choose, they'll choose one of those songs, I'm sure.
So just to finish, because the time is very passing very fast with you, it's very interesting to get all this story, incredible story about Dio.
Hmm.
You exist since finally this band exists since 45 years. What is your feeling about all this incredible story? Because it was a long story, a long road, and you are still here and you play and you have a great band and you have a great album. What is your feeling about these 45 years in the band? There are some stop, but the band exists.
Yeah, I feel blessed, really, to be able to have gone through what I went through right from the beginning, from Ronnie's stages through the Elf stages. I learned so much from Ronnie. He was just an incredible person, and I still, when I listen to his songs, it still brings tears to my eyes, because we had such a close relationship. You know, there was an electricity there when we were in the same room. That whole part of my life, you know, was something very, very special to me. Then the Rods, it's different, but it's something we all strive for and we all worked for and wanted to do. And you know, in one of the other interviews that I did, I was asked like, well, how did you manage to get along with, like Carl and I have been together in this, for all this time. And I said, everybody has little idiosyncrasies, and if you can understand those little idiosyncrasies from each person, you're all shooting for the same goal, you're all shooting for the same goal, because I could never understand why someone like Richie would leave the biggest band in the world to start his own band, or why David Lee Roth would leave Van Halen, that was the biggest band in the world, probably at the time,
Yeah.
Maybe it has something to do with egos. I don't know, but I think you just have to understand each other and get along. I'm blessed to be able to do that and to still be able to do it, and continue on.
So really, David, thank you very much for this interview. And I hope, like I say before, that one day you could do a huge tour in Europe, play this music, play this album, and play all the great tracks you get on all these albums. So really, thank you. If you have something more to say, it's just now. Who's important for you?
I hope that we can do that so we can meet in person,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it would be great.
it would be great. We're looking forward to that. We really are. And it's going to be interesting to see how this album is received by the fans. And I think that we may even pick up some new fans from this album, because it's slightly different than the old style. But you gotta just persevere and express your feelings and be true. Be true to yourself.
Yes, what we could say is that the album is out since 5 of September, so you can find it everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you very much, David, and
Thank
have a nice
you.
evening, perhaps. Bye bye.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.